Good afternoon, everybody, and thanks for tuning in again to Procrastinator's Pit Stop. Today we have another amazing guest for you, Utkarsh Narang. Utkarsh is a learning consultant, executive coach, facilitator, and content creator based in Melbourne, Australia. Over a 16-year career from being a physiotherapist, and a good one at that, to filming and editing 400 hours of content for a Columbia Business School professor, to scaling a startup and leading sales, to now helping individuals and teams outperform themselves. He has learned to really make fear his ally and living a courageous life. He lives by 5 core values, which we're going to be going over today in the show. And the one quote that he lives by: live as if you were to die tomorrow, learn as if you were to live forever. And that is by Mahatma Gandhi. Utkarsh, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Chris. I love to be here and love to be having this conversation with you and our listeners.
Excellent. Now, before we dig more into these 5 core values and what brings you to the show, could you give us a little bit of a background and just your journey from where you started and how you are where you are today?
Absolutely. So it's been 39 beautiful years on the planet, Chris. The first 18 were in pursuit of just having a great childhood. Happiness being my only kind of success metric, I think. And then the world started to take over, right? The society started to tell me that, Utkarsh, you got to become this and you got to do that, and then you got to earn these many rupees or dollars or wherever you are in the world. And then life kind of takes over. But I think what I've realized over the last 15, 18 years of my career, Chris, is that whatever it looks from the outside, where people say, Utkarsh, a physical therapist, and then getting into filming, and then into content creator, what's wrong with you, man? What are you trying to achieve? But I think what I've tried to achieve always is that what sounds right to me in this moment, which is the day to day, but also serves a larger purpose and just gives me a lot of joy, because I think ultimately there's going to be a day when you and I, everyone, all of us, and it might sound grave to start the podcast, but we'll speak more about it. We'll all die. I mean, none of us are immortal, and so why spend time in doing something that does not give you joy? And that's what my journey, in summary, is all about, Chris.
Okay, well that's certainly something interesting, and it's very true that society doesn't really put a lot of value on happiness. Well, they are now, but they never really used to. And it is true, one day we are all going to leave this planet for once,
Yeah.
whether we like it or not. So why not live and be happy? That's a great mantra. I really like that. Why don't you tell us a little bit about these 5 core values?
Absolutely. So when I speak about the core values, I just want our listeners to also understand that they don't just emerge out of the blue and out of like the universe and start to be applied. I think we all live with certain values in our life. That could be honesty, that could be care, that could be compassion, empathy. But if we were to kind of sit down and really reflect upon, we find that there's a pattern in the way we live. And so that's when the values kind of from the subconscious start to emerge into the conscious. And so this journey started for me about 10, 12 years ago, when I started to really ask myself, like, what am I doing on this planet? What's my purpose? What's my value? And purpose not in like some large magnitude kind of a way, but a little small purpose. And so through those conversations with myself, what came about was that I have been living with these 5 values that are really special to me. And if I were to plan to live a life that's well lived over the next 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years, then I'd love to live by these 5 values. And the values that emerged were discipline, excellence, growth, freedom, and love. And I think these 5 values then kind of have almost become like an anchor, Chris, that whenever I'm at a fork in the road, or whenever life's kind of feeling a little overwhelmed, then I pause and ask myself, am I living by my values today? And if the answer constantly is a yes, then I think it's in a good place, and I'm joyful because of that. And these values can show up in small little things. When you started the show today, Chris, you said good afternoon, and I'm thinking, oh, I'm in Australia, I'm in the future, and it's what 7 a.m. my time, so it's good morning for me. But I and look at that beautiful sound that just came. But I, even if it's at 7 a.m., I got to show up here right on time, because I value Chris and I value the listeners who's going to listen in. And so discipline comes up as a value. And so all these values get expressed in the day to day as well. But these are the 5 values that I've lived my life by.
Hmm. It's very interesting. And do you think that everybody has those at their core those same five values, or do you think it differs
It
based on?
differs. It differs. I've done this work, Chris, with coaches across the world over the last 4 or 5 years, about 1,500 hours of coaching, and this is something that we somehow end up speaking about in our journeys when I'm coaching someone, because it's really important for us to resolve things on a deeper level rather than just scratching the surface of the iceberg. And so when I ask this question, some people find it very easy to think about the values. Some people still think of the superficial, where my family is important, where the outside world is more important. But then through conversations, they tend to go deeper. But each person, it's like your thumbprint, right? It's very unique to who you are, and that's how the values are also very unique to you, to who you are, and the expression of values also, Chris, is very unique to who you are.
Mhm. Yeah. And in terms of these values, how important do you think it is to be aligned with your values when you are thinking about when you went back and you said that you've had all these different jobs and all these different positions? How important is the value system of an individual when they go out and they start looking for their opportunities?
Oh, I think it's instrumental in deciding the fate of your journey. And I'll give you an example. So I had a beautiful, purposeful job with the business school professor. I was working for them with about started in 2013, stayed with them for the 8 years. I built that content, scaled the team, sales. It was pure bliss when I walked into that office. And I would never tell people that corporate jobs are not for you, because if you find a good corporate job, that's a great path to take, and you should absolutely enjoy it. So find what's good for you. But when the pandemic came about, I realized that again that fear of death started to creep in. That, oh, people left, right, and center are dying because of this bug called COVID, this virus called COVID. And so what if I die today? Then what would I have achieved in my life? And I realized that I would have loved doing what I've done, raising the family, but I also have this deep desire of doing something of my own, of this idea. The company that I have, Chris, is called Ignited Neurons. And I want to put that brand out there in the world. And that's when I decided that even though this job is purposeful, pays really well, takes care of mine, my family's needs also, but I still got to move on from here. And so it was in those 6 months, December of 2020, when I decided that that's the end of my working tenure. Now, come January 1, 2021, which is just the next day, I don't have any clients. I don't have a domain name. I don't have nothing. But it's the value of discipline that made me understand that, Utkarsh, you got to wake up, get ready, do your workout, and 8 a.m., like you would be on the desk for your job, you got to be on your desk for your work. And that's discipline. Because unless you show up, no opportunities are going to happen for you. So that's one. The second is, I started on maybe one path, and maybe our listeners would be thinking right now, oh, I want to start a side hustle, or I want to overcome this challenge. The question that you got to ask yourself is, why is that important for you? And if there's a value that can serve that challenge, that can help you resolve that challenge, then it'll make the path much easier for you.
Okay. And actually, you mentioned something really, really interesting there too, the discipline. And how how do you stay disciplined? Because what happens to a lot of us is, we start out disciplined, and then, we get really excited. We have our why, we want to work out, just with working out or starting a business. How do you keep that momentum and that discipline?
Yeah, I think when we start out, Chris, it's not the discipline that makes us going. I think it's motivation, or it's some inspiration, or they listen to this conversation between Chris and Utkarsh and they'll be like, tomorrow I'm going to build my $1 million business, or tomorrow I'm going to do this. That never works, because what that then happens is that it's a big spark. It's a blip in your existence, and you start off on a high, but as your energy goes down, or as the results don't start to show up, the primitive brain kicks in. It says, Utkarsh, it's been few weeks. You've been sending these emails. You've been reaching out to coaches. Da, 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 da. Nothing's working, man. You should stop. But the idea is that within those 2 weeks, how can you kind of decide your fate? And so discipline then walks in. Discipline says that I'm going to have a routine which will be as monotonous as it can be, because I'm in pursuit of a larger purpose, and I'm going to show up, 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 and things are going to happen. While I show up, I'm also going to, again, I'm going back to my values, but you should go back to yours. I'm going to find growth in those opportunities because maybe I'm doing A and the A does not work. And so I need A plus B. So I'm building a business. Let's go back to that. I'm trying to build a business. I have this one idea, but I'm seeing that there's no kind of product market fit coming here, or the audience does not want this product. Then should I just continue on that path? No, maybe it's time to learn, grow, and tweak, and then go out back with that discipline to keep going, keep doing. And that's the only way I see, Chris. And maybe there are others who've seen other things work, but for me, I think it's really important, more than the material success that life can offer us, to be aligned within to the values that I have.
That's it's very good viewpoint. And it is so important because I know, like, even in my own personal case too, and I'm sure you've felt it in your life, when we're not aligned with what we're doing, if something is not like true for us, doesn't resonate for us, then we don't have the energy to keep going. We don't feel like we can keep going. Is that correct?
Yeah, absolutely. And as the name of the podcast is procrastinator's pit stop. Sometimes I also wonder when I'm procrastinating about something, I also wonder that it could be a few things, right? One is there's this idea that I've been playing with, is that I'm consciously procrastinating about something, and I know that I have a presentation that's due in say 2 weeks. I'm gonna do it 2 weeks minus 4 days, and that's when the best idea is gonna come. But then the other idea is that sometimes we procrastinate because there's just emotions that get involved with something like that, and they don't allow us to move forward. I think for me, in those moments, what I've seen is the values again come back to the front, and they tell me, Utkarsh, if you're procrastinating, but you said discipline was a value, what's stopping you then from making progress? Why are you like sitting and lazing around rather than getting the work done? Because at the end of the day, that's going to make you feel better. So again, it's a very complex yet simple interplay. For
Mm.
someone who's listening to it for the first time, it might seem, what the hell is this person talking about? I don't think this works. But once you start to really operate from this core principle, that you have a set of values, you got to express them, you got to be aligned and living by them, then things become easier, because there's no way to make life easy, but they become easier.
No, that's very true. And actually, that's where your company comes into play, right? Ignite your spark.
Yeah,
Could you tell us a little bit about that, and how that
absolutely.
plays in everything?
Absolutely. So the idea of ignited neurons and this idea of ignite your spark, this came to me about in 2016, where I was trying to refine my photography skills. And so I started this project where I would go onto the streets. And again, happiness comes back because that was the purpose as a child. I would go onto the streets of wherever I was, and I would ask a stranger, "Hi there, how are you? And what's happiness to you? What makes you happy?" And I would have conversations with them for sometimes 5 minutes, sometimes 30 minutes, sometimes we would spend 90 minutes sitting on the sides of a street, and then I would take a picture and I would put that content onto my Facebook, on my Instagram, and those conversations to me were like they ignite the spark, because as soon as you ask this question of a stranger, they feel like, oh, there's a person who's interested in me, and they just light up, the aha on their face, this space on their face, which just lights up. So Ignite Neurons started from that moment, and then in 2021 it became more into let's help managers become future leaders in the world, and have these conversations. So the core purpose is that we can help individuals, teams, and organizations live a more fulfilled life, live a life where fear becomes an ally, and they can live with courage. Because at the root of most of our challenges, there's some fear, whether that's a fear of failure, whether that's a fear of external validation or not, whether that's a fear of what the society thinks of me. And so all that starts to creep in. And that's what we do, Chris.
Yes, it's a very interesting concept. I mean, I'm somewhat familiar with the idea, but could you explain a little more about what exactly do you mean by making fear your ally?
Absolutely. So this idea again, so I was recently asked to give a TEDx talk. And as I was looking at building and preparing that TEDx talk, my idea was that I've done all these career changes. Last year, my wife and I, with our 2 kids, moved from India to Australia. So another big leap. And all I was thinking was how courageous we are. And let me speak about courage. Let me go onto the stage and tell the world how much courage we have had and I have had personally to do all of these things, to design a life that I truly wanted. And then what I typically do, and this might be insightful for friends who are listening, what I typically do is when I'm going into a big project, I have a group of very close friends and mentors who I bring together on a WhatsApp group, and I ask them that this is what I'm doing, this is the idea, break it apart, like tear it apart as well as you can, because I love feedback and that helps me. So most of them were in that moment saying that, Utkarsh, this is a great idea. The world needs to speak about courage. But one of them said, Utkarsh, but what about fear? When you were making these changes from being a physical therapist to filming, from leaving your job in the middle of the pandemic to becoming a coach and a content creator, from moving from India to Australia, halfway across the world, was there no fear? Because fear comes more naturally to the human mind rather than courage. Courage is something that you have to grow into, but fear is something that you're born with, and then it depends on how the dual nature of fear plays out. And that's when I realized that if I were to go back to all of these transitions, and I speak in more detail on the TEDx stage, but if I were to go back to all these transitions, then when I was a physical therapist, I wanted to do something else because I was not ready to not have an impact on the planet. The fear of just touching a few lives and not having like a large impact was the fear that drove me. When I got into that role, the corporate role, there was a fear that all of these people who have hired me, the team, they'll someday know that I'm an imposter because I'm a physical therapist. What do I know about filming and editing? Why the hell should someone trust me to buy me a ticket to New York and have me stay there for 3 weeks and film with these Ivy League professors? Not at all. When we moved here from India to Australia, there was a big fear, and that's when I realized that this interplay of fear and how you choose it to be like the motivator rather than making it kind of limit you. And if you were to learn this skill of reframing fear in every moment, that's when we'll be able to live more courageous lives, more fulfilled lives, I would say.
Okay, that's it. That's very very interesting as well. So the question that comes to my mind when you're talking about that, and the example I can think of is a little bit passe, I guess, a little bit, right? But it's so you're talking about turning the fear into the motivator. So I go to the gym because I'm afraid of getting fat.
Yeah.
Is that what we do? So as long as you can kind of take that fear and turn it into a driving force, but at what point does that fear then turn into courage, or then transfer to discipline, or any of the other ones?
Beautiful. I love that example, Chris. So we could have like a larger coaching conversation on this, but here's what I'm thinking. When you said that it's the fear of getting fat that's pushing you to the gym, can you go one level deeper? What's the deeper fear?
Well, the deeper fear of that would be fear of ostracization or rejection by the public in general, right? Because if you're fat, then you're seen as undesirable. You know,
Right.
validation, right? Goes down to the validation self-worth.
Mm. Why is validation important to you?
Well, validation is important. Well, I mean, it's ingrained in us from when we're very young, right? I mean, it's just one of those patterns that this is in humanity in general, right? That when we're young, we want validation from our parents, and then we draw a picture and we take it to them and we say, "Hey, look at what I did," and then we get it out into the world. We get a cell phone, we're on Facebook. Oh, I posted this. I hope everybody likes it, and if nobody likes it, it's the end of the world. So we're just ingrained to kind of want this validation from external
Got it.
sources.
Got it. But this impact, Chris, of going to the gym, how does that impact you and your life?
Well, going to the gym would impact my life because I could be healthier and hopefully extend my life a little bit.
And what would you do with that life?
Well, that's an interesting question. I would turn around and try to help as many other people as I can, and get them to be comfortable with who they are too.
Mm. So what do you need, Chris, to overcome this fear?
So to overcome the fear of rejection, you just need to know that you are your self-worth, and you don't need external validation to be valid.
What do you need to do?
Go to the gym.
So what I'm trying to do here, Chris, is that when we have a deeper conversation about this fear, the fear started with that, oh, I'll get fat. But that's superficial, right? Because that's just your external appearance. As we go deeper into that fear, For you came up the fear of rejection, the fear of not having that external validation. Then it came to that I want to prolong my life because I want to impact and help others around me. And that's why the action that I need to, and we did like a 2-3 minute, but this would be like a 45-minute conversation, maybe more, just about this conversation. And I was very recently having this kind of a conversation with someone. And what they said was that I want to go to the gym because it's important for me to be alive for my kids. It's important for me to be 45, 50 years old and still be able to play with my kids. And as soon as that opened up for them, they were like, then what the hell is stopping me from going to the gym? Because at first, it starts from a place of fear that, oh, I'll get fat, I'll die, this will happen to me. But then you reverse it or move it or shift it into a space where I want to overcome this fear and be courageous because then that will impact me and my relationship as a father or a mother to those kids. And that's when everything shifts. And these are very internal conversations. I have two boys who are 13 and 10. And a few years ago, I was overweight, and not that I'm not like some six-pack abs right now, or not even I will kind of get there. But it was when I was trying to run along with them or play along with them, I would feel tired very quickly because I was working long hours and I was paying more attention to my work. And then I realized that they're going to grow up very quickly. And so what's stopping you, Utkarsh, from getting better for them as a role model to them? And I think these transitions, if these ahas were to happen within our brain through a coaching conversation, they allow us to make progress in a much better way. And then the final nail in the coffin, so to say, would be to make sure that you build a process to track that shift. That now that you're courageous, you've decided to go to the gym, how do you track your progress over time is something that's going to be very.
You've actually touched on something that I have also like thought a lot,
Yeah.
and just in coaching in general, and even motivation in general, is that, and I don't know, I'd like to hear your viewpoint on it. So my viewpoint is that in our society, a lot of our motivations are actually fear-based. And I had a theory that, sometimes it's hard to have the discipline and it's hard to follow through because what happens is we're starting from a place of negativity. So, even though that we have positive intentions, we've got that negativity that is overpowering it because we're not reframing it. But if we reframe it into the positive, then that's going to be a stronger whole. Is that the idea?
I love that thought, Chris. And it you just a few minutes ago shared that, oh, I take up drawing that I take to my parents and I'm now seeking their validation. I was once coaching someone who's now in the US, about 35 years old, works in tech, one of the largest tech companies in the world. And all this while she was saying that, Utkarsh, I cannot go to my manager and have an assertive conversation with them, even though I know that I need to do that. And I'm like, why is that? And we kept on kind of going around and around till that one moment when she said that because I still feel that 7-year little kid, the girl that I was, is being blamed by my parent that why didn't you come first in your class? Why didn't you excel on that exam? Why are you number two? Because you had to be number one. And when someone was speaking to me like that, that was dumbing down my voice. And now it's still very hard for me to go back to my manager. And the question that I ask in that moment, Chris, is what you said is a beautiful reframe, but it's almost like you're carrying a weight on your shoulders of a little 7-year-old girl, of what their mom said, what their parents said, what their dad said. What's stopping you from putting that weight down and walking free? And I think it's just that visualization that, oh, I can walk free. I can give myself the permission to find joy. I can find myself the strength, the courage to give myself that freedom. And I think once that starts to open up, it absolutely helps. So I think the reframe of moving from a negative space to a positive space is great and it's very important. But healing takes time. And I've seen people try too quickly into it, and sometimes they fail even harder, and it becomes even more difficult to come out. So take your time in that healing process, and just keep making progress in the right direction. But I love the thought that you've shared, Chris.
Oh, it's definitely true that in our formative years we don't even think about it. I mean, I just recently had a coaching session myself, where you know, I was going through something and they asked me a question and I remembered something from my childhood. I almost drowned once and I thought that, it didn't really affect me, right?
Yeah.
Because I was looking at the surface level. So, I never learned how to swim.
Yeah.
So because of that, I did do all these activities, but it goes deeper than that because that also shaped my identity in where, I found it very difficult for a long time to ask help from other people.
Yeah.
And it all stems back. And I didn't even think about that,
Yeah.
right? So just going and exploring these things sometimes is all it takes to really understand each other.
Absolutely. And we've put too many labels on ourselves, Chris. From the very young age, we've been told that, oh, you're good at maths, you're not good at English, you're good at this, you're good at arts, so be this or do that. You're a doctor, so why try and be something else? You are an introvert, so why try being an extrovert and this and that? But the choice is ours. It's my choice who I want to be in this moment. Maybe I'm an introvert on the inside and I have to put in a lot of energy in this podcast with you because I want to speak out this message to the world. And then after this is done, I can go back into my zone and spend like 5 minutes with myself and be that introvert. But the choice is mine in every moment. And so I often, so I had a mentor who I was in New York with on a work trip and we were having lunch. And he asked, Utkarsh, do you know how to play the violin? I'm like, no, I've never played a violin. I don't know how to play a violin. And then he went quiet. I'm like, you asked me this question. Do you know how to play a violin? And he said, maybe I do. I've not tried it yet. So that's a great perspective because I've not picked up the violin. I don't know. Maybe it's within me, but I've not tried it yet. And so the question that we need to ask ourselves every day is that how can we transform and reframe ourselves every single day? The human body is going through a change, Chris. This conversation you and I have, if folks are listening, if they spend the whole 45, 1 hour, whatever time we spend today, if they listen to it with intention, they're going to be a changed person by the end of it, mindset wise. But even though the body would have changed in the 45 minutes, the body would have changed into new cells, produced, some cells died, this and that. So change is very, very innate to the human body, soul, mind, whatever word you want to use. And so if change is so natural to us, why are we fearing this change? We need to
Mm.
put our foot down and say that, oh, I'm going to be this new person tomorrow. And I used to be an introvert growing up in school, Chris. I would not talk to, I would have like a group of friends. They would make me feel comfortable. I would enjoy time with them, and that's about it. The day I went to uni, my first day, I clearly remember, I told myself, Utkarsh, you step into these gates a different person. No one who has known you the way they have known you should be able to recognize the way that you will become now. And I chose that moment, and I don't know if there's an extremist version of extrovert. I was that. I would dance on the grounds of the university. I would sing songs even though my voice was like hoarse. I rapped Lose Yourself in a university fest, and I came second. So I just chose that identity and I went ahead with it. And it's not that hard. It's not that hard. If I can do it, I'm pretty sure there are 100,000 smart people listening to this who can absolutely do it.
No, that's a very good example. And two things came to me there out of that. The first thing is the labels, and it's interesting to me because to me I don't like labels, and the reason I don't like labels is because I feel that when we label something, we really it's almost like we're dismissing it, right? We're saying we've labeled it. Oh, we already know everything we need to know about it, and it's true. And we do this millions of times a day subconsciously. I mean, can you remember? And it's really interesting because I had somebody else I was talking to, and he said that, can you remember everything you saw yesterday? And, you label off a bunch of things. And I said, not really. And he said, try this. He said, go out and actively try not to label anything.
Mm.
And it's interesting because it's true. Like if I saw something in the street and say, oh, it's a tree, whatever, I couldn't really remember every single tree, right? But I noticed that when I didn't, when I actively tried not to, I actually retained more information. I retained more details of things.
Yeah.
So it's almost like by labeling it, we're dismissing it because we say, oh, yeah, we already know everything there's to know about it, right?
Yeah, yeah, that's powerful. It's such a good exercise, and I think we have to come. We're going to a place where it's not very comfortable for the world yet, but I think our consciousness also expands every moment. And so, who's going to stop us from expanding ourselves? And we got to stop putting these labels on ourselves, on our parents, our children, siblings, managers, individuals, teams, podcasts, wherever you go. You've got to stop putting these labels on each other, because we are much more than what meets the eye right now.
No, yeah, we definitely are. Just in science has made great leaps and bounds for that, and it's kind of gross, but I know that we're actually more bacteria than we are human. So there you go.
Yeah.
Perfect example, right? Just to go back really quick to your example, you said that you really changed when you went to university, you became this other person.
Yeah.
Um, so what what kind of prevented you, or why didn't this idea occur to you while you were still with those people that knew you? Why what made it easier when they didn't know you?
Yeah. So I think, as I reflect with you on this, so it's like till about grade 10, I had this group of friends, right, who were like me. And we had this social concept that we're going to be like this, we're going to be introverts or not, we are comfortable with who we are. In in grade 11 and 12, a new kind of influx happened in my environment, which made me look at, oh, look at these people. They're very different. They're listening to these rock songs. They're doing this and that, and they're chatting with girls, and they're having so much fun and this and that, which was a new concept for me. In that moment, instead of putting myself back into my comfort zone, I fought stagnation. I did not fight my comfort zone, because comfort zone was still amazing. I fought that I'm going to be stagnant. That's not going to happen. And I started to kind of push myself. What else can I do? What's my boundary like? And it was that new environment, the new kids that walked into our school at that time, and grateful to them. They actually one day pushed me, Chris, to be on stage and to do some mimicry of some Indian politician at that time. And now I was really scared, because who the hell am I? I've never been on a stage. What do I know about this and this and that? And all my metric was that I have to make people laugh. And as I was doing that on stage, I might be screwing up, and I don't even remember. I have no recollection. But all I remember is that the audience in that room that day were laughing, and they were with me, and they were having a great time. And so that new identity started to form slowly and gradually. So when I went into uni, then after 2 years of this new exposure to my environment, that's when I was able to make that choice. So I think sometimes it's also very important, when you're trying to shift your identity or trying to shed the labels, then you change your environment a little bit. Sometimes it could be the change of a job. Sometimes it could be change of the degree that you're taking. Sometimes it could be change of country. We were in India a few months ago, 16 months ago, and now sitting here in Melbourne, Australia. So I think the environment plays a massive role in what you can do and achieve through the changes.
Okay. So the environment. Okay. So environment, people you surround yourself with, your activities, things like that. If you had to instill all of this wisdom and all of this kind of advice
Mm.
into sort of one powerful tip for people to really start to find themselves, or find a better, more courageous life, what would it be?
Wow, that's a big question. Uh, so many neurons are igniting right now. But I think the one thing that I really would love to share is the 2% rule. And what that really means is that if I were to ask you, Chris, what's 2% of 24 hours? It might take a few minutes, you can calculate it, but what it comes down to, and drum rolls, and I'm going to help you, is 28 minutes. So what I recommend people is that for 28 minutes in a day, which is just 2%, not a lot, just sit down with yourself and actually do an analysis of your existence. How am I doing right now? Where do I want to be? What's better in my life that I can learn from? What needs to improve in my life that I need to work on? Whether it's your relationship with your spouse, whether it's your job, work, business, whether it's your ability to create a personal brand, your ability to parent, anything, your relationship with yourself. Just sit down with yourself and have this deep conversation. Man, what the hell is happening in my life? We as large storied organizations, as startups, as whatever we are, we do these every 3 months, the results of the company are released into the world every half year. Then at the end of the year, we do a performance management for ourselves every 6 months, every 1 year. But we never do that for our lives. And if we were to start spending that time on understanding what the hell am I doing right now and where do I want to be, then we can be more intentional. And so instead of reaching a default future wherever life takes me, go with the flow, we'll be able to actually pave the path of where we want to be, the desired future. So the 2% rule will be the synthesis of what we've spoken about.
Okay, well, that sounds like a very good rule, a very interesting rule, and it's true. I mean, we often don't take the time to analyze where we are, where we've come from, or what's worked and what hasn't. And you've got lots of plans. You've obviously done a lot, and you obviously know where you're going. But what are your aspirations and plans for, say, the next year? Where do you
Yeah.
see yourself?
So the big, hairy, audacious goal that we're working with, Chris, is to touch 1 billion lives. And as soon as I say that, my mind tells me, Utkarsh, shut the F up, man. What makes you think that you can achieve it? And that's where the fear creeps in, that you're going to say these things and not be able to achieve them. What the hell is wrong, Utkarsh? The external validation. What will Chris think after 1 year when you've not even touched like 100,000? But then I tell myself again, but Utkarsh, so that's a great insight again. That what if it works out? Your brain is telling you you will not be able to do it. People will judge you for it. People will put labels on it. People will laugh at you. But what if it works out? So that's one. And even if it does not, if you're finding joy and living aligned with your values, then what the hell is wrong, man? Have fun, have these great conversations with Chris. Hopefully people will enjoy it. Have other podcasts. So all that is what we're doing. The kind of the more granular kind of path that we have, Chris, is that started to work on a book around fear because I was seeing that there's not enough in-depth conversation around fear yet. So hopefully that should be out in the next 1 year, and then continue working with coaches and clients across the world to support their needs. Traveling to India tomorrow morning. So yeah, it's joy, and the biggest joy comes from seeing our children grow, and the relationship that my wife and we share grow as well, because that to me is the anchor. Peace is needed there to go out and do beautiful things for the world.
And what do you think is going to be the biggest the biggest challenge or the biggest mountain to climb in the next year for doing that?
Balance. I think it's very easy to let the noise from the outside, and this impacts everyone. Noise from the outside can sometimes put you off balance, and you could feel like that shiny thing. That's my goal. So I think creating that balance and keeping your eye on the goal, that is very important. And I think one story that immediately comes to mind is it's from Indian mythology, where there were these five brothers who were being taught to do archery by their teacher, and one of them was the kind of the best archer of their times. And so the teacher puts a bird in a tree, and it's an artificial bird, so no birds were killed in this experiment. And he asks all brothers to come up and says that you have to hit your arrow to the eye of the bird. And so they asked all the brothers, what do you see there? And the four of them, who were not the best yet, say that, oh, I see the trees, I see the leaves, and I see the bird, and then I see the eye of the bird there, and I see the clouds and this and that. And then the teacher calls the one who's the best archer, and he says, Arjuna, what do you see? And he says, teacher, I only see the eye of the bird. And he picks up his bow, shoots the arrow, and he hits the eye of the bird. I think that's what's important for us as well right now, that what's our eye of the bird, and we pursue that with great intention and attention, and we don't get distracted with all the beautiful noise that the world is throwing at us.
So essentially, focus, being focused and not getting distracted, not letting anything distract you from that. Very good. Um, is there anything today, Utkarsh, that maybe I should have asked but didn't ask, or maybe something we didn't cover that you feel we should have covered?
Yeah, I think we've covered everything. Maybe just one thought that's still kind of playing in my head, and is that and it comes from the name Procrastinator's Pit Stop. If anyone outside is procrastinating about anything, I would really nudge them and have them go and find their values, because the values sometimes serve your procrastination even in beautiful ways. And go deeper, ask yourself some tough questions, because the answers to those tough questions will build a life that you'll be really proud of. And do it first for yourself, and the rest would follow.
Oh, that's definitely it. And you know, awareness, introspection, knowing yourself, and these are things that we should all do. That's very good advice again from our master coach and master igniting your spark there, Utkarsh.
Someone
And
who's trying, Chris, someone who's trying each day. It still has challenges. Maybe that's one last thought. We still have, each one of us has their own set of challenges, and build life one day at a time. That's what I think will give you a lot of joy. And there's no carrot at the end of the stick. Don't do things because there's a stick and there's a carrot. Just do it for the sheer joy of things can bring you. And if they don't bring joy, then it's time to change things around.
always look for joy. Great. And also, just before we go, what is the best way that our listeners could get in touch with you?
So Chris has this amazing podcast, so everything will be in the show notes. I'm not going to spell my name out or anything, but look me up on LinkedIn. I think that's the best way to connect. Definitely go and check out the TEDx talk if yeah, that'll give you some ideas around fear and courage. And then yeah, we're on Instagram as well, but Chris has all the links in the show notes. Look forward to our chat.
Sounds good. And thank you very much for being on the show today, Utkarsh. It was a pleasure. And to all our listeners, you know, thank you for tuning in once again and getting that motivation and inspiration you need to keep going. And if you can't find that inspiration or motivation for whatever reason, then be that motivation or inspiration for someone else.
Beautiful.
And we'll see you again next time.
Thanks, Chris.